Here in New York City, officials say of the tens of thousands of retail thefts a year, 30% are committed by just 327 criminals. The NYPD says it's that group of criminals arrested and rearrested 6,000 times.
That's a lot of arrests, but it gets even worse because a trio of thieves have raided over 300 stores in this city. Yet they and thousands of other shoplifters are still walking the streets as free men, revealing that our criminal justice system is backwards and almost seems to be designed to protect our criminals instead of locking them up.
It's more than just shoplifting, it's organized retail theft.
Just 10 people account for nearly 500 arrests in New York City since 2020. Now Mayor Eric Adams is sounding the alarm. He says the state's bail reform law is to blame, creating a revolving door for criminals.
I just see stuff getting loaded into a shopping cart. People go about their day oblivious to these kinds of activities that are going on.
One person has more than 100 lifetime arrests, 88 of them occurring since 2020. Another person, arrested 23 times for burglary in the last 2 years, is out on parole.
The police are pointing at the bail reform law for the uptick, but defenders of the state's reform law say it's more complicated than that.
What we're seeing is them attempting to pull choice pieces of data for the political purposes of undermining bail reform laws.
Our criminal justice system is insane.
Judges cannot set bail for crimes like robbery, burglary, and assault. People charged with those crimes are released until they're called for trial.
Again and again, this trio of shoplifters continues evading our criminal justice system. But what everyone's missing about this is our laws, which don't punish stealing, allow petty crooks to get really good at the art of taking things that don't belong to them. And they turn into hardened criminals without any reason to change their behavior. So they aren't, which is why in 2023 there were almost 60,000 complaints of retail theft in this city. On top of that, the CEO of Rite Aid went on record saying that retail theft right here was part of their decision to close several stores last winter. But that's a huge problem because every time a store shuts down over theft, the criminals who were stealing from that store, they don't shut down. And instead, they're forced to seek out new targets. And while store closures might inconvenience and depress New Yorkers, to criminals, a store closure just means a change of scenery is in order because this is their way of life. And that's why if you go to any drugstore in town or any Target, you'll see wall-to-wall plexiglass and now recently added security guards, which unfortunately don't seem to be working, as determined criminals will find ways around all of those measures. And the worst part is, even if the police do show up, the best they can do is waste that criminal's time arresting them and then releasing them because stealing anything under $1,000 in value isn't a jailable or bailable offense. Now, proponents of our criminal justice reforms love saying that our revolving door justice system is a good thing because it's led to New York City seeing lower rates of wrongful convictions, which is what happens when people get jailed for crimes they never committed. But that brings us to the real reason why we've got 3 people committing hundreds of robberies and counting. Yes, our justice system has lower rates of wrongful convictions, but that's only possible because we aren't convicting anyone of anything in this state, and when we do, we set them free. Which means the only defense our stores have against thieves are passive anti-theft devices like bike locks that chain things to Macy's, or security tags and security glass. But as you're about to see, those things matter not to a professional thief, especially in a place that won't put them behind bars. So as you can see, our stores are pretty stacked with security, which might do a lot to keep an honest man honest, but don't really do a whole lot to stop a determined professional thief from taking what they want.
We've talked to store owners, neighbors, loss prevention, and prosecutors. But the one voice we really haven't heard from, the criminals themselves.
I wasn't stopping for nothing.
Martin Castaway led a crime ring which hit big box stores. Give me a ballpark figure how much you think you made.
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
So here we have an interview with a career criminal who steals for a living from places like Macy's, Target, you name it, he's probably stolen from it. But he explains how trivial in-store security is to thieves like our career criminals in New York who've robbed over 300 stores. And it didn't matter to him, and he's located in a place where he eventually went to jail for stealing. And the reason thieves don't care is because there's just too much money at stake for criminals to quit taking things that don't belong to them and get real jobs. And in most cases, it's too easy for them to make off with tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise, which they then turn around and resell in order to make money. insane. And in New York, we still haven't figured that out, which is why we've got anti-theft devices, which are supposed to be the be-all, end-all of criminality, and obviously they aren't, especially when they aren't properly secured. But these thieves, they don't just randomly run into a place and take stuff. No, they've got a list of what they want, they know where to go and get it, they know when to go and get it, and nothing is going to stop them from bringing it out the front door of the store.
If I see a security dude, I know he can't touch me.
What factors did you consider when determining what to steal?
The most amount I can get in the least amount of time. I mean, I would go into a store, steal $5,000-$6,000 worth of merchandise, be out in 2 minutes.
So it looks like when these guys decide what stores to go after, they're looking for a place that poses the least amount of resistance to them. That matters more than the value of the things that they're stealing. And this makes a lot of sense because if you go to Macy's, they've got these really expensive jackets, but they're all physically chained to the store. Those are gonna be harder to take than something from a place that doesn't lock anything up, even if the items that aren't locked up cost less. But these criminals, they're essentially looking for what the easiest grab they can find is. And when they enter a store and stuff doesn't look like it's secure and that stuff sells for a lot of money on the internet, you can bet they're gonna have their eyes on it and come for it at some point. And the situation gets even worse when you look at how some stores actually have policies that prevent their employees, or rather discourage them from interacting with criminals in any way. Now, nothing sold in this Target is worth the personal safety of one of the store employees. No way. But when some businesses don't even bother involving law enforcement when they get robbed, that makes things just so much worse because criminals feel like there's even less consequences, which just emboldens them and gives them more opportunities in their mind to continue doing what's wrong. And with a little practice, the anti-theft measures in places like Target start to matter even less.
Castaway and crew parked close with the getaway driver standing by. Anti-theft devices like security ties that tether merchandise to the rack might slow him, but wouldn't stop him.
And if it had a cable on it, I don't care. I have a pair of cutters in my pocket that say this stuff's mine anyways.
Castaway stole armloads.
Wow, so I guess if you're a real thief, anything that uses a cable to secure it to the store, like a bike lock or a cabinet, they just cut right through those with tools they're carrying with them. That's awful. But it makes sense. If this guy is able to go into a store that's understaffed as it is, and he's able to make off with a whole rack of coats, that's a lot of profit selling those things at 30, even 40% off online. They're probably gone almost immediately. The same goes for popular everyday items like deodorant. Amazon, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, you can find that stuff being sold all over there. There are so many ways to get rid of stolen items that when people aren't punished for stealing, they get rewarded almost instantly for their crime. But there's a couple things about theft in New York City that make it even worse than it is in other places. First of all, in order to be one of these criminals, you have to have some computer skills. You got to be able to sign up for Amazon and offload your stuff there. You have to know how the internet works. But here, if you don't know how the internet works and you're able to take things that don't belong to you, you can find other people who do, or in some cases, you can just sell that stuff right on the side of the street, like a person I saw selling things out of a suitcase right in front of the bus terminal in Midtown. Plus, there are large numbers of independent businesses run by people who prey off other businesses that are willing to buy stolen merchandise, take the tags off, and then sell it in their stores. Places here have been caught doing that too. But the saddest part about all this is that the people committing these crimes, oftentimes they themselves are victims of something even worse.
What can be done in our community to help reduce shoplifting?
Say more treatment programs.
Would tougher laws or penalties change this?
I don't think so at all. I think anybody who's engaged in this type of acts, I would say 70-80% of them, they need treatment, not prison.
In Castaway's case.
So this testimony lines up with what a lot of other investigators have found. Oftentimes the people that are doing the actual stealing, the grunts on the ground that are taking things from stores, they're suffering from other addictive behaviors. And stealing things enable them to keep getting the fast money they need to continue what is a downward spiral. Which makes you wonder, should we have harsher penalties for people who sell things that they shouldn't? But the real issue is that this crook, he's in jail, yet our city's full of career criminals that are walking the streets right now looking for their next target. And there are many who say that if our thieves couldn't just walk right past security guards and right out of the front door of a store with nothing to worry about, we would have a lot less theft. Yet for some reason in this town, we don't seem worried that our criminals aren't worried about anything, and that threatens every single business we have. So theft here is so bad that retailers have figured out that if it can be stolen, it probably will be. But the dumbest thing about this rise in retail theft is it happened almost immediately after the state passed controversial criminal justice reforms. Yet ever since then, activists have been telling us that those laws are not the reason display blenders at Best Buy are now locked up.
In the wake of the state's new bail reform law, new statistics point to a rise in overall crime in New York City.
But advocates of bail reform believe there is no correlation between the crime increases and the new law.
What we're seeing is them attempting to pull choice pieces of data for the political purposes of undermining the...
So that clip is from 4 years ago, right after New York City passed its criminal justice reforms. And today, while crime is much, much worse, we hear a lot of the same arguments about how these laws really aren't the problem and it's something else. And the normal people of this city who are surrounded by plastic and anti-theft devices and alarms on everything, when they shop, they're told that they're not smart for thinking that we've got a theft problem here. Instead, we're told that feeling like crime is making things worse for everybody, that those are just political viewpoints that don't line up with reality, and that those views are propagated by people who want to lock up criminals who are actually innocent and throw away the key. Yet today we've got 3 people that are out there robbing hundreds of stores over and over again. Obviously something about that is just not right. And if we would do something about it, like maybe put those 3 people in jail, a lot of businesses would be saved a lot of trouble. But the worst part is, to many people, this rise in crime was entirely predictable.
Our criminal justice system is insane.
Also under the law, judges cannot set bail for crimes like robbery, burglary, and assault. People charged with those crimes are released until they're called for trial. The mayor
Robbery, burglary, assault. If someone gets arrested for those things, they're automatically released. That's insane. Here we are releasing criminals who do more than just steal. It's ruining society. They do it over and over again, and yet we allow it to happen. Now, when these people are released, they're told that it's illegal for them not to come back to court at the appointed time and face justice, but surprise, surprise, that doesn't always happen for some reason. And when you look at our trio of criminals, you notice a pattern. They get arrested, they get released, they get arrested, they get released, and at no point are any of these 3 people learning the lesson they need to learn, which is, hey, you shouldn't do this, it's a bad idea.
One person has more than 100 lifetime arrests, 88 of them occurring since 2020. Another person arrested 23 times for burglary in the last 2 years is out on parole.
100 arrests. That's just absolutely ridiculous. What kind of system arrests somebody 100 times and releases them 100 times and expects things to change? And what lessons do we expect shoplifters with hundreds of arrests to learn the next time it happens? Nothing. Yet we hear from activists that, oh, it's so much more complicated than that. No, it's not. If it were, you wouldn't have to have a security guard here at this Walgreens, and if our criminals were locked up like our products, they wouldn't escape and rob our stores. Yet when average New Yorkers go into a store, everything's locked up and the prices are higher than what they used to be. They wonder why that is. And they don't make the connection between all of this security and these extra high prices. Why else are these no-name Walgreens brand water bottles $15 when on Amazon you can get stuff cheaper than that that's an actual brand? Well, that's because, as you can see by this wall of plastic behind me, if you try to sell stuff out of a physical business in this city and you don't lock it up, it's gonna leave the store by itself. And it costs extra to make sure that doesn't happen, and you and I have to pay for it. Yet as we've seen, some criminals don't even care about these measures. And when criminals clear out our shelves, you've essentially got a system where the law-abiding who pay for things subsidize the cost of all that crime. This is essentially wealth redistribution from the law-abiding to the criminal underworld, and most of our elected officials, except for our mayor, are perfectly okay with it for some reason.
The mayor now sending an SOS to state legislators to toughen the state's bail laws and give judges more power to keep repeat offenders or recidivists in jail longer.
This is about a small number of people that are taking advantage of the existing laws.
So that was 2 years ago, and here we are today, and nothing's changed. These toys, well, not this one, but the others, they're locked up. And let me ask you, why is all of this here if we don't have a crime problem? Look at that, even the chapstick is locked up. That's crazy. But I guess it's not once you realize that we live in a city where the criminal sympathizers who run this place think to themselves, you know, these crooks that are stealing armfuls of jackets, oh, they don't mean any harm. They're just just doing it once to feed their family, and then they'll stop, and then they'll straighten up. It's not a big deal. Just let it go. And now I get to pay $6 for something that just a couple of years ago was $2. And the biggest problem here is that most New Yorkers have no idea their lives get more expensive every single day because we allow this to happen. And they don't even realize that the cost of stuff getting stolen at a store, it doesn't just jack up the prices at that store. So you see this gift shop over here on the corner. For many years it was a Walgreens, which shut down in 2020, and this place here just opened. So for 4 years this store got no rent, but you know where the landlord got the rent? The apartments that are upstairs. That's a rental building. Everyone in there's had the privilege of subsidizing crime for a long time. And what's crazy is that this is entirely solvable. We know who these 3 people are that are robbing hundreds of stores, and if something would just be done about them, we'd have a lot of stores with a lot fewer crime incidents. Yet we keep hearing from the criminal sympathizer crowd about how that's not a big deal. They're just trying to get something to eat, or the world's unfair, and you know, there are other reasons for why they're stealing. Don't blame the criminals. But the question many law-abiding citizens have is, at what point are people actually going to be held accountable for the things they're doing? How long are we going to make excuses for them? If 100 arrests isn't enough, what about 200 arrests or 300 arrests? At what point is there a limit? Are we tolerating unlimited amounts of crime in this city? Is that why things are the way they are? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.